Welcome to the Connected for Real podcast. I'm Rebbetzin Bat-Chen Grossman, a marriage coach for women in business. And my mission is to bring God's presence into your life, into your marriage, and into your business. Let's get started. And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Connected for Real podcast. I'm Rebbetzin Bat-Chen Grossman. I'm a marriage coach for women in business. And today with me is Yael Bendahan. And we're talking about birth and business because there's so much to say about it. And because Yael is the ultimate person to be talking about this. So Yael, introduce yourself. Tell everyone why you're so awesome, and then we'll get right into it.
Oh, so I always joke that I kind of birthed the business in between two of my kids because I started my business, 7 years ago. I'm like, what year is it? Yeah, like seven, I think like 2016, 2017, something like that. Yeah. I think about summer 2017 ish, being a virtual assistant because I had a 1-year-old basically, and my oldest was 6. We had 4 kids. So my oldest was 7 or something. And we realized at that point that we'd gotten to the place where one income was no longer going to cover things. And I was like, well, I didn't even graduate high school. So what do you want me to do? The idea of sending my baby out full time to get a job that would maybe cover that and maybe a little bit more, it just felt like not an option for me. And so I was obviously Googling, things you can do from home, and I tried a whole bunch of different stuff, but I kind of started doing virtual assisting for bloggers after I tried blogging myself and learned all the skills, and then realized it was going to take a long time to really get my blog to the place where I was making a decent income. And my friend, who was also a blogger, was like, well, why don't you just be a virtual assistant for bloggers? You know how to do all the things anyways, just do their stuff for them. And I was like, oh, you could do that. And that's kind of how I started, in 2017, it's 2016. Oh my God. Yeah, 2017. My baby was about 1.5 at the time. And that was kind of how I got started down this path of being into online business and online marketing. And I just kind of really geek out over it. And I started doing it as, doing Facebook ads for people and then building sales funnels and running their launches and things like that until I got pregnant with my daughter, who's now 4. And then I realized that actually the way I'd been building my business was not a very sustainable way to build a business because it was all really dependent on me. I was offering so many different services and I was hiring as needed. It was not conducive to having a baby. I was doing discovery calls all evening and I was like, well, I have a baby. I don't know when I'm able to put the baby to bed every night. I can't do this anymore, And so I shifted into doing teaching service providers how to grow their businesses, how to get more visible. And during that time, during my pregnancy, I actually productized my service-based business to the point where I probably could have continued doing it after I had the baby. But then I realized that I just really enjoyed the coaching much more. So once she was born July 2020, I basically just shut down the service side of my business and I went all in on coaching and courses and things like that. And that's what I've been doing. And I just had my 6th baby, another little boy. I have 5 boys and that one girl. So my baby's 3 months old now. And yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been basically teaching moms how to build their businesses alongside their babies in a way, basically the way that I didn't do it, and the lessons I learned from that and how I was able to rebuild it when I was pregnant. That's kind of what I teach them now, is how to productize their services enough so that it can streamline and really just then use that as their base to expand their offer suite and be able to make more, I don't like to say passive income because it's never really passive, but I guess more leveraged income from other offers. So that's what I do. And yeah, here I am.
That's super fun. So just to give you guys context, this is a perfect time to be doing this podcast because just like Yael said, she has a baby. I also had my baby almost 6 months ago. And when we were both pregnant, we scheduled this thing. So
we need to get around to it. We should do that.
We were going to record when we were both pregnant so that we could batch and not have to think about it. But I think this is way better because now we can tell them how it actually worked out and what we learned from the experience. Both of us really prepared our businesses for our births and then for having a baby and running our business. So that's really a fun conversation to be having, especially since it's perfect timing for both of us.
Yeah. 100%. And I'm actually really glad because I had a lot of plans before. And then I realized I had a baby during my, I'd had a baby during my business. And so I was like, oh, I know how it's going to go. I know how it's going to go. I know how I'm going to feel. After I had my daughter, I went back to coaching after 6 weeks because I was so excited to get back into calls with my clients. And for some reason, I'm casting my mind back. I cannot remember how I was doing coaching calls in the evening when I had a very unpredictable newborn. I don't even know. I don't remember. But this time it was very, very different. And because of everything that's been going on in the past year and the pregnancy and everything, and we just had a bar mitzvah as well. Like, it's been a very, very, very crazy year. And I just really needed to take a beat and rest a lot more than I realized I would before I had the
Right.
baby. And so I'm actually glad we're doing this now, because I had like a lot of ideas of like how things were going to go. And then they didn't necessarily go that way. And like, I'm like, okay, that's good. But that's the whole point. Like, that's why I built my business the way it did. So it can handle that. Right. Because you don't know how things are going to go, especially when you're a mom, you never know anything's going to go, really. Like, anything can
Right.
happen at any time. Your kid can
Yeah.
come down with mono and then be out of school for a month. Like, you don't know, like anything can happen. So I'm really glad that we're kind of like looking back rather than like trying to like, this is what we're doing to plan, but who knows,
Right.
so.
Right. And also, I didn't tell you guys who are listening, but Yael said this is her sixth. So for me, it's my eighth, and my oldest
No,
is turning
goals.
18. I know. Everybody, like, hold yourself back from crying. I love her, and she's just like growing up, and I'm like, no. You really
Yeah.
want to hold on and just grab these little moments. So it's
You really
really
do.
exciting.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate, like, I enjoy the baby stage so much more with each one, because like I know what's coming. And it's just
Exactly.
very, very different, having big kids. But I'm like, having a baby with big kids. I had my first four very, very close together, like all about 2 years apart. And so having a baby with older kids is so much more fun
Oh yes.
than, I'm like, I mean, the first few weeks, I had like try to get him back from people. I'm like, please let me just feed him, like, they were like,
Yes.
no, but we want to hold him, and now, I mean, obviously the newness is worn off a little bit, but it's amazing. It's amazing. And everyone's like, oh, I don't have big girls. I was the oldest girl in my family, and we had like a few girls first. And then, so my mom had a lot of help when she had my youngest brother, but even with the boys are obsessed with him. And it's so sweet to see, these big teenage, macho kind of like grunty sort of boys turn into like these like melting like marshmallows as soon as they look at the baby. And it's actually, it really helps me see them, like see that side of them more, which really helps me as a mom when I'm feeling really
Right.
frustrated with them, because I'm like, they do have a very loving, kind side. Sometimes I don't necessarily see it, but it exists, and they will show it to the right people. So that is very reassuring.
Yes. Yes. My mother, when I was growing up, my mother always said, they always told me that it gets easier after the third, and I tried having my third first, but it didn't work.
It didn't work.
Um,
No, 100%.
so I always thought this, like, okay, so it must be true, and it really is. It really is so much easier, because as soon as you have a 12-year-old that is responsible enough in the house, it is a life-changing experience.
Yeah,
First of all,
100%.
for me, it's having someone to talk to on an adult level. If a teenager is already like having real questions and real things, and they want to know about real life, and we're talking about things that aren't just like, what color is this, and how many are there, and like
Go clean your
regular,
room.
yeah,
What do you want for
regular
dinner? Yeah.
regular baby stuff. And I think once I had that experience, like you said, you're enjoying the baby stage a lot more. So for me, I think it's also my inner work. Like, I wasn't as patient with just being. I was
Yes.
always trying to do, and be something. And now it's just like, I just am. And I'm holding a
Yeah.
baby, and I don't need to do anything. It's so fun to just be, because of all the work I've gone through.
Yeah, 100%. And also same with like just the baby stages as well. Like with my older ones, I was so desperate for them to like, just until they can do this, until they can do that, until they're going to sleep through the night, until they're going to, I'm like always trying to like look to the next milestone. Like, when are they going to, right? And like, and I'm a very, very type A person. So I found the newborn stage so, so difficult, because I was like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And you can never, like, you can try to make your routine, but the babies don't want to listen, and like, it was very, very stressful for me. And like with my last two, especially, I'm like, I just enjoyed this stage so much. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, okay, so they're taking a nap and whatever, it's 45 minutes, or like, okay, so they're waking up, and I'm like, I don't even care. Like, I don't care. It's just, it's such a short time. Like, I'm like, I feel like he was just born. He's already 3 months old. And he's like smiling and trying to roll over and interacting with everybody and everything. And I'm like, this passes so quickly. And like with each, and I sound like such an old fogey because you're like, oh, enjoy when they're little, and I can't even say that to people because people said it to me and I wanted to punch them in the nose. Right. But like, I really, really do. Like, I'm able to like enjoy the process instead of looking ahead towards like what's coming next, what's coming next, because I'm very like achiever kind of like sort of mentality. But like with babies, like the fact that I can just enjoy the journey is so much nicer. And I'm just enjoying. And when I had my daughter, I felt the same way. Like I would just sit there with her at night. Normally by 6 months, I would like sleep train them. Like, that's it. You have to sleep through the night. And I was like, okay, I'll give her a little more time. And like, it's going to be okay. And I was just like, I was never like this. I'm like, I want to have like 5 more kids like this because now I know what it's like to just be and to just enjoy them the way it
I
is.
know.
My husband's maybe not so on board with 5 more kids like this, but like, but I'm like, this is so much fun. This is such a better way to do it. But like, I didn't even know because I needed that perspective as a mom of more kids in order to be able to understand this. Like, I wish you could understand it with your first few, but you really can't. And even
Yeah.
people tell you, it doesn't help because you're still not going to feel it.
I think it's like, you can't skip any part of the journey. You
For
can't
sure.
bypass the growth, right? So it's like we wish we weren't first time moms with all the anxiety and all the things, whatever, but
Right.
like you have to go through it in order to figure out what works for you and what doesn't,
Yeah.
and what you like and what you don't like, and how you like to do things, and giving yourself permission to just be yourself and be your type of mom and whatever, right? Like you have to go through it. You can't skip it. So that's something that I think is just really fun to notice.
Yeah.
Let's get
Yeah.
into how did you prepare your business for having a baby? And what advice can you give other people who are in that situation?
So, well, there's like there's so many ways, right? And again, like I was planning on batching a lot more before I had him. And then I just couldn't because it wasn't like my life just slowed down. It was like we were coming down to the end of the year. It was like towards the end of the school year because he was born in June. He's actually born on my birthday on June 20th. I was due 2 days before my birthday, and I was like, wouldn't that be funny if I had a baby on my birthday? And then I did. So that was really funny. So we were coming towards the end of the year. There was a lot of stuff going on, like with the kids, with everything. And I was getting a bunch of stuff ready. It was just not enough time to do as many things as I wanted to do. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. Because there's a certain level of, because I don't do as many interviews and stuff like on my podcast, for example. I've done like occasional ones with my clients, but I don't do like a ton. And so I very much like to have my podcast be like in real time and like very up to like to what's going on right now, right? I don't want it to be like stuff that I batched like 3 months ago that is not relevant anymore, to like what I'm doing at the moment. And so what I did do was I did like a decent amount of repurposing. And that's the thing, when you're not pregnant, right? When you're not in crisis mode, right? Or when you're not like in a time where you want to take off, like to me, it's very, very important to be able to stay as consistent as possible, because when you do that, then you can just take stuff and reuse it again, right? Like you don't need to be creating new stuff all the time. So when I did want to send out emails, I did repurpose some stuff. I sent out my newsletter. I did a roundup of like old podcast episodes that I think people would really enjoy, right? And things like that. I also, because I really wanted to grow my audience throughout the summer, I didn't want to deal with like ads and like having to deal with like turning ads on and off. Like, were they working? Are they not working? I knew I was not going to have the mental capacity to even deal with that. And so I organized ahead of time to grow my email list, like a lot of collaborations. I was part of a big summit with Gemma Bonham Carter, who is, she's amazing. So it was called the AI Unlocked Summit. And I talk about how I use AI to produce my podcast. And so I got, I don't know, like a few hundred subscribers, like just from that. And then a bunch of different bundles and giveaways and things where, this wasn't hard for me to do. I did not have a VA at the time. I just, some stuff happened and I just didn't have any support at the time. Like when I had my baby, because I didn't have because it was too close to having the baby, I did not have them, again, the mental energy to like try to find someone new and try to train them in. It just didn't, it wasn't there. And so I was like, okay, what can I do with like minimal to no support? I borrowed my friend's VA to send out like call reminders for my clients because they were doing co-working calls with my co-coach and things like that. So I was like, can I just pay you just to like do that? Like just to make sure that those are going out, like look at my calendar, see when they are, send them ahead of time, send the links. So I don't have to even deal with that. Right. So that was really, really important. And then once that was taken care of, I did not put a lot of pressure on myself to continue putting out like proper content on my feed. I did do a lot of stories. I did like stories kind of behind the scenes. Here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. Because that was like more keeping people in touch with what was going on for me. I sent out at least one email a week because I was part of these different collaborations. Plus, I'd probably send out another one with like previous content that I already created. Right. So it was very much like taking and leveraging what I already had, because I'm like, I've put in so much work into creating content for so many years. There's no reason why I should have to like pressure myself into creating new stuff when I have a baby. It makes no sense. And so that was really like, looking back, I have Google Docs and Google Docs and Google Docs of content that I've already written and created. And yeah, is it exactly what I'm doing right now? No, I can change it. I can change the little details of what's going on in my life and resend it. So that's like probably my biggest tip is like when you're not pregnant, or if you're thinking about doing it, or you're thinking about taking time off or having kids, like that's when you should be showing up consistently, because that's the stuff that you can then reuse if you don't have the time to create extra new stuff for when you are going off. So that's one thing that I was like, oh, I'm planning to batch my podcast for like 2 months. And I didn't do it because I was like, forget it. I recorded a couple in real time with my baby, like in my lap, basically, after he was born. And now I'm back to recording my podcast. And it's like a thing now. Like I will do it around his mid-morning nap in the baby carrier. And I'll, put him through the baby carrier. And then I just sit down here and I record my podcast. And that's how I'm doing it, because that's like my time that I know I will have available with a quiet baby who can be like jiggled back to sleep real quick, if I see that he's waking up. And so that was like the first thing is being able to show up at your full capacity, whatever that capacity is, right? Whatever, if you're up at 60%, and then showing up at 60% is like you're 100%, right? So it's not like it's like showing up at like double. It's just showing up at the best you can when you're not in this place. You're not postpartum. You're not like, first trimester pregnancy. You're not on vacation, so that you can then take your stuff and use it again. And that I think is really important. And we kind of forget like it's not just like showing up now and getting visible now and marketing now and making sales now, but you're showing up now is and actually investing in the times when you're not going to be able to do that, and you're able to reuse it again. So that's like, I think really, really, really important. And people don't really think about it that way. And I think it's an important thing to keep in mind, not as a pressure, but just as a reminder how important it is to be able to keep showing up as best as you can.
Right. So for me, for my podcast, I sat down, I think it was January, and maybe it was December, planning the year. I printed out the entire year in, 12 pages. And I put a Post-it note on every single Monday. And then I created a system of how my podcasts were going to be structured. So my entire program, by the way, is 4 pillars. There's God, marriage, business, and you. And then I decided every topic is going to have a different angle. So we're talking about business and birth, but we also have marriage and birth, how birth affects your marriage. We have birth and God, like how you find God in birth and why God created birth and all these different things. And then how birth affects you and, what you could do for yourself. So every single topic, we had money, we have food, we had renewal. That was like a really cool one. So any topic just from a different angle, that was really fun. And then it also gave me a really easy structure for all of my podcasts. So anytime I spoke to a guest, I'd say, what speaks to you? And I just filled up the entire year within 3 months, because every topic was just so perfectly, like every person fit in so perfectly into the little plan.
I love
And
that.
it was so cool. It was so cool. So I have so many people who wanted to be on the podcast and topics that worked really well that we already have planned all the way until March of next year. It's like really crazy.
That's amazing. And no, I love that. And that's, to me, when I teach people how to do like one of my best selling kind of topics sort of thing is I do a challenge called Stand Out and Sell. And I teach people how to create your signature framework, right? Like how to create your signature framework, and not just like for fun. So it's like, it's a cute thing to say, right? Because I have like my CEO Moms method, which is MOMS, right? And like, it's not that just that it's cute and it fits in with my brand, right? But also it makes planning what you want to talk about so much easier, because all you need to do is just figure out just like take those big topics and then just break out like little mini subtopics. And that's all you need is like, and the cool thing about that is if your signature offer, your signature service uses your signature framework, then everything that you talk about ties back to what you do and what you sell. Right. Whereas, and I'm not saying you can't just talk about things you feel like talking about, right? Like, for me, like mindset is a big part, right? So it's mom. So it's mindset, offer, marketing, and systems. Right. And so a lot of the stuff that I talk about CEO mindset and stuff like that. And so a lot of things I'll talk about is, what is the kind of mindset you need to have going into things, right? Like I have a post on my Instagram right now. It's like, I was trying to send out an email about this sale that I was doing, and the tech completely failed me. Like my email, like it wouldn't even load my email thing. And I was like, great, I'm gonna have to do this whole sale on social media. And that's not great numbers, because of the algorithm. Like, you don't know how many people are going to see your stuff. Right. And like, here's what I did. Here's what I didn't do. Like I did not, totally panic and like be like, okay, that's it. My business is over and nothing's ever going to work again. Here's what I did. I refreshed it a few times, posted some like mini, like, what I would have put in my email on my Instagram stories, had a glass of wine with my husband, pumped, and went to bed. I was like, okay, I'll figure it out in the morning. Like that was it. And so like the cool thing is like all that ties back to my pillars, and that's what makes it so much simpler. Like when I say having a signature framework makes everything simpler, it does. Like when I plan out my content for the year, and I have like it's funny, I just finished creating my mini course called my Mom Viable Marketing Method. And it literally teaches how to take your signature framework and break out your topics that you can really sell anything that you create, but anything that you talk about can tie back to your signature offer. And it makes it like, it just really, really, really simplifies it so much. And it's great because like you said, you can plan this in advance, like way ahead of time. And I love that. Like it makes it very, very simple. Like simple does not mean easy, but simple in a way to know what you're going to be talking about and how you're going to be bringing things back to what you're doing. Because anything I talk about on my podcast, like when I have an idea, odds are it's going to fall into one of my pillars, and I'll be like, okay, how do I tie it back? And like that's what I'm going to talk about, right? So it's amazing. I have an episode coming up. Like I plan to have an episode coming up. I think in November about entrepreneurship and marriage, because that's like a huge thing that's been coming up for my clients. It came up like a lot of stuff for me. Like it's not easy to be an entrepreneur and to be married to someone who's not an entrepreneur, because there's like definitely like a disconnect, like mental like mindset about this kind of thing, right? And how do you work through it? How do you figure it out? And sometimes people don't figure it out, right? And so like and again, that's a big part of the mindset piece as well. It's like how are you going into this? How are you discussing it? How are you, so I love that. And it's really fun because it really is all just connected. Like it's connected. Like
Yeah,
everything. Like
it is connected. And if you
yeah.
want, I could come on your podcast and tell all your people about the call method, because that's really what I talk about. My specialty is the marriage in the business. So how do you balance the marriage and the business for God's
Yeah.
sake, right? It's all for God anyway. So let's make it all work.
I would love that. That's actually, it's funny because I was actually like looking, so I totally forgot about you, which is a horrible thing to say. But I was like, I really need to get some, like, and I could talk about it like from my perspective and like, here's what I think is going on, but I'm not a marriage expert. Like I've been married for almost 16 years, which is bananas.
Yeah,
That's
it's
crazy
not
to me.
great.
I'm like, like I've been trying to think about it. Like I was 18 and I got married. My husband was 19, and we were so close to being married for longer than we were not, and it's kind of nuts, like when I actually think about it, but thank God. Yeah.
It is. It's very cool. It's very, very cool. So that is my expertise. And actually, when I niche down to do marriage and business and that intersection, I realized very quickly that I'm the expert, just the fact that nobody else is talking about it. And it gave me so much. Well, obviously it was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And then it was like, wait, I can actually show up. And I got courage and started talking about it. And I became the expert very, very quickly. I think because of the experience I had, because I was noticing that a lot of people around me and myself also were creating more and more distance because they were succeeding and their husbands were not, or they were making it and their husbands were still frustrated with whatever they were, dealing with. In the old fashioned marriages, the guy was on top and the woman was on bottom, and the advice was empower the women so they could be equal. But the empowerment movement really sort of pushed us ahead. And now the woman's on top, the guys are at the bottom, and the more empowered you are, the more distant you get. And so empowering isn't the answer necessarily, but disempowering isn't the answer either,
Right.
because
100%.
that's not going to get you anywhere. So how do we create a situation where you can improve your marriage and really create more connection and have more intimacy and just feel really good being married, and not feel bad being successful, not having to turn the volume on yourself off or lower because you are afraid to step on his toes or hurt his feelings or, poke his ego or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want that elephant in the room. We just want to be happy together,
Yeah.
And that feeling of like, I'm building the business so I can have the freedom to be with my family and the people I love. And then realizing that the thing you built in order to have that is actually creating the distance is so frustrating that it self-sabotages the business. And then you're even more frustrated because now you're not successful at anything.
Right. Yes. I was thinking that because it's I think that also, like, in order to grow a business, you also have to grow a lot personal, like do a lot of personal growth, right? As a person, right? And I think that when one person is doing a lot of personal growth and the other person is not, they're not getting worse, they're just staying where they were, right? Because that was fine. That was fine before. They're just staying where they were, right? But then, like, there's like this sort of level of like, maybe I outgrew the other person, you know?
Right.
And so really, like, what really ended up having to happen, like with me and my husband for sure, is like we realized this was happening and we were like, well, we have two choices, right? We could either just accept that we're just growing apart, and then at some point, the kids all grown up, and then we have nothing to do with each other, and then we just, you know, or we can just make a concerted effort to come back together, because if we didn't make any effort, it was just going to keep going,
Right.
like an escalator kind of going in two directions, like where it's like.
Mhm.
And so there's been a lot of active work in communicating with each other better and then explaining the reasons behind why we feel certain things, instead of just like saying, "Oh, I just think this," and and like and really really listening to the other, and like as like a very like control freak, type A sort of person, right? And I'm like, it has to be like this, and that's it, and like not wanting to listen to his side, because obviously I'm right. Okay, I'm also the oldest daughter, so I feel like I must be right. Like otherwise then like everything's gonna fall apart, right? And I had to learn to like listen and to like respect his point of view, as well, even though like I felt like I'd done more research about this or I must know better than this, right? And then I was like, oh, actually, like he actually has a really good point of view, and he's actually right, just from his instinct. He didn't have to do all the research to get to that point. He just knew what was the right thing to do. And like there was so, and thank God it's been, amazing how even over the past year or so, like even like as while I was pregnant and after having this baby, like you're able to really come closer together in a really beautiful way, which was better than I ever even hoped for, and it was just, it's so amazing. I think that, very much like if you're able to stop and listen to the other person and hear why they're feeling certain ways, and make a point to, even actively change things on your side, and not be like, oh, you can't make me do anything, because like that's the tendency, like that's my tendency to be like, well, don't tell me like how to, like I'm the way I am and you can't like change me. You know, and I'll decide
Yeah.
if I want to change, but being able to really listen and respect. And I hate, like, and it's always like, oh, you have to respect your husband. And I'm like, obviously I respect my husband, right? But I'm like, yeah, but maybe I wasn't really. Maybe I wasn't
Right.
respecting. Maybe I was respecting him like in theory, but in practice, like he would give his opinion. I'd be like, oh no, but no. And I'd be like, okay, I'm listening, but I'm not really listening. And it was not an easy thing to see that about myself. And I was like, wow, like you thought you were right all the time, and obviously you were not, right? But being able to realize that and accept that about myself, and make an active effort to slow down and like listen, even like that was my one thing this year, was to stop having knee-jerk reactions. And it's become like comical almost, so now I'll just say things to see, like, to get me to, like, I was thinking we should build a chicken coop in the garden, and I was like, that sounds like a really interesting idea. What were you thinking about building? Why do you think we need a chicken coop in the garden? And and can we talk about that? Because I really don't want our garden to look like a yard sale. So how can we maybe not make that happen? And like, and it's so funny because he thinks it's really funny, because like he'll just say things to see me like open my mouth and then like be like, "Mhm, mhm, tell me more about that." you know and like, to me, like that, I really just like, if that was the one thing I could change about myself this year, like that would be enough for me. I think like that, just that one thing was just changing my initial shutdown and be like, no. And usually because of fear, because I'm afraid of, things changing. I'm a very like, I like things to be like organized and systemized, and that's how I am, and that's why I'm good at teaching things like this for business. But if I'm worried that somebody's gonna come in and like put a spoke in the wheels, I'm like, I like have to like defend the the system, because if the system
Right.
isn't working, then it must mean that I'm not working, and it means all kinds of stuff about you. And that has like changed everything, like his attitude towards the business and my attitude towards him and our parenting together as a team. And it's been really, really amazing. If there's like one thing I would say, like that would probably be the one thing is like just stop the knee-jerk reaction and like take a beat. And that one thing that changed like everything for me as a wife and as a mom also. Because when my kids come to me and say ridiculous things, I have to also be like, mommy, I want to build a car. I'm like, okay, you're 10. All right. Wow, that's such a great idea, building a car. Like, how do you think you can build a car? Like, what are you planning on using to build the car? You know? It's like, and no, and I really see that the kids really appreciate it because like then they can like tell me all their ideas. And I'm like, wow, that is so interesting. Like, wow, it's a really creative idea. Like, I never thought about building a car. It's amazing that you think you can build a car, that you can visualize that, And so like that literally all it took for me was to like stop my knee-jerk reaction and just pause. I think like that
Right.
pause has like, changed my entire parenting and my entire like marriage in this past year. And
Wow.
which is really it's really amazing. And I think the same thing happens when it comes to business ideas or business decisions or business stuff, right? Like, because you can get like either like someone's like, oh, you must have this new funnel, and you're like, I need this new funnel, and you're like, wait, do I really need this new funnel? Like, just stop for a second and think about it. Like, do I really, really need this, or does this just look really, really shiny and cool? You know,
Right. Yeah.
and
And this is
it's
where having a coach is so helpful because you can
yeah,
just throw it back, be like, do I need this thing or do I stay on the path and just keep going where I was going until I heard about this thing?
yeah, 100%, 100%. So yeah, half my coaching is literally just saying, I want to do this, 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 and this. And my coach is like, okay, I hear that. All right, but do you really need to do this, 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 and this? But if you just started with this and this, and that probably would make a very, very big difference in your business. I'm like, yeah, that probably would make the biggest difference in my business, right? And I can see that so clearly for my clients as well. But it's harder
Right.
when it comes to your own stuff because you're so close to your own stuff. That's very
For
hard
sure.
to make unbiased decisions about your own business. You know?
Yes. Yes. I love that you're saying about how you like to protect the system and not have anything throw anything in the wheels. And then suddenly you're like, and then I had a baby, which is like,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
we're talking about birth here. And,
That is
I
not
had,
protecting the system. That is not.
no, it's like you would think that this would be the biggest challenge to a business is having a baby because not only do you not know what to expect, you don't know how you're going to react, you don't know how you're going to be. You really can plan from here until tomorrow based on all the past experiences and blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, it really is the most unknown thing that you can
Totally. Even if
go
you've had
into.
kids before, because every baby is different and every birth is different and every postpartum is different.
Mm-hmm.
100%. I feel like I'm rebirthing my business in a way,
Yeah.
but like both times I had a baby, I also like rebirthed my business in a way because I started my business with 4 kids. So like I don't count that necessarily, right? But when I had my daughter, right, 4 years ago, I pivoted my whole business into coaching because like that's what I really want to be doing, and it was great, and it was an amazing business model for me because of the baby and because of the way it worked. I worked maybe 2 hours a day, and that was like my biggest year to date, like almost double what I'd made the year before, and so I was like, okay, this is how I have to do things. Now with this baby, like when I was preparing for maternity leave and when I was preparing for my business, it actually like really helped me see all the holes that had because my business model, I had a completely different business model now as I did before, right? And my kids had all been in school for a couple of years already, so I'd had like time to kind of mess around and maybe not make the best use of my time necessarily. Like, and so that was when I actually saw like how many holes actually were in my business that I now realize I need to fill, and I now have like a plan for my business that looks a little bit different than the plan I had before because I'm like, I have so much like I've created so many courses and so many trainings and so many things that I've like sold once or twice and done like absolutely nothing with afterwards. And I'm like, that is just so silly. And like now that I have my baby, I'm like, all I want to do is just sit on the floor with him and play with him. That's all I want, and then like get on calls with my clients and coach and I really, really enjoy it and create some content and then just go off again and just play on the floor with my baby. Like that's all I want to do. Right. So obviously like business is a little bit more than that. And I'm like, I don't want to have to show up live in order to make money anymore. Like I want to be able to like show up live part of the time, but also be able to just not if I don't feel like it and still be able to make money. And I'm like, here you are with all these courses that you've created and all these trainings that you've created and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm now more than ever. I'm like, okay, now I've been pushing this off for years, but now I really can put these things into some actual sales funnels that will actually make me money. and I've been pushing it off because it's just easier to just show up and sell something new because it's more exciting and it's more, and it's more like instantly gratifying because you show up, you make sales. It's relatively quick. Whereas building a funnel, or building, writing email sequences to sell something or whatever, or making a webinar, it takes more time and it's not as instantly gratifying, right? But it is in the long run going to bring me closer to the business that I want, right? So that, like, for me was like a big wake up call. Like when I had my baby, I was like, oh, like, or before I had my baby even, I was like, wow, here's where I probably could be making so much money that I haven't even been prioritizing because I've been so busy showing up live because I could. And now I'm like, what if I can't? Like, what if I can't? What if I just what if I didn't want to go back to work for 6 months? Right? Which is not the case. I really, like, I miss my clients a lot. I came back after like about 2.5 months. No, not even, like about 8. Yeah, maybe 8 weeks when he was 8 weeks, 10 weeks old. Yeah, 2.5 months. And I started doing calls again and it was amazing. And I love it. And I love showing up and coaching. But I didn't want my ability to make money to only be tied to my ability to show up and coach, because I needed to be able to take time off if I needed to. And so I was just like, okay, like this is good information. And now I know what I need to do with it because I, the baby is a baby, like that happens, but other stuff happens in life. It's not just babies, right? And so I needed to have like that, like, so now I'm like, wow, like it just really opened my eyes to like where I can plug those holes and where I could be building in more leveraged income on the side that I already had some, but like not enough to my mind. And I have like a certain goal I want to reach where I want to come into every month with X amount coming in on autopilot without me having to do anything. Like if I did not show up and sell a single thing, that's my goal. Right. And so now I'm like, okay, now I know the goal I'm working towards. And it might take more time because I have a baby at home and I'm very busy and I, don't have a lot of time to sit uninterrupted and work. But like it's okay because I have my goal now. Right. And so I think being open as well to things in your life happening and that showing you where you might need to pivot or change, and like that being okay. Like I'm not saying you should pivot every 5 minutes because that's not pivoting. That's just like shiny object syndrome. But like being open to the fact like the stuff that you maybe wanted before may not be the exact thing that you want afterwards. And that's okay. You change as a person every time you have a baby. You really, really do. And like I said, I want to just enjoy this time. I just want to revel in it because like they're little for such a short period of time,
Yes.
And it's like, no, I mean, I didn't want to get into it. I'm going to start crying. I was looking at him last night and like he had turned around in his bed, like 45 degrees on his back. And I'm like, he's moving in his crib. Like that's already like a step towards moving in general. And I'm like, he's getting so big. Why is he getting so big? And my husband's like, he's only 3 months old. Like, calm down. I'm like, I know, but still.
Every single day, you open your eyes and you look at them and they've grown. And it's like, how did that happen? How do you grow so fast? It's crazy. It's amazing. I found one of the coolest things that I could do, thanks to my business, is like in the middle of a session, I'm just nursing a baby,
Yes,
and
I did that. A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and everything's fine. Like I did it so many times throughout the summer. My kids were at home. I had sessions, but it was fine. My oldest daughter would bring, my second one really liked doing this. She would change the baby and, make her all cute and whatever, and then just hand her over to me as I'm in the middle of talking. I'm just like, okay, plug the baby and keep talking with one hand, you know? And it's so powerful for me, just that freedom to be able to continue doing the thing I'm doing, not have to pause everything because I have to nurse, or not have to pause everything because I have to change a diaper. Be able to just do it. Oh, there was one time, oh my gosh, there was a podcast episode that I went live with someone. No, it wasn't a podcast episode. It was a webinar.
Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh, this was crazy. There was a webinar. I had planned it all out and I ended up having nobody to watch the baby that day. So I was like, okay, she's sleeping here anyway. You said mid-morning nap was the best nap. So I was like, it's going to be fine. Baby is sleeping right behind me. Suddenly we hear like, big poop explosion in the stroller behind me. And I was like live with people there and everything. And I'm like, okay, guys, this is the point where I have to decide if I'm going to ignore my baby or put you guys on hold. And I've decided to be in integrity with my, with my life and with everything I stand for. And I'd like you to please wait 1 second while I go change the baby. I like left the video on because I didn't mind, I'm like showing them the cute baby and going and washing her tushy in the sink and then coming back and putting the new diaper on. And then I just started, like, I went right into it because I was in the middle of talking about something I
That's
really love
fine.
to talk about.
This is what we
Nothing
do.
bad, nothing bad happens when you are authentically yourself and standing up for your values.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's really good. It was a really good, like, I felt like I was really modeling my values and stuff, like, for my clients as well, because I'm like, this is my thing. And this is like, I talk about being a CEO mom. This is what it is, right?
Right.
Like, I record my podcast with my baby and the baby carrier because that's my life now, right? And I'll nurse the baby on a call, and like, that is okay. And that's just, and everyone was like celebrating. And that's the thing, like, I have the best clients, right? And the reason why I attract the clients that I do is because I'm aligned with the stuff that I teach, right? And I'm aligned with with what I talk about all the time. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is the most awesome thing. Our coach is nursing her baby on a call, like, just to show that you don't have to stop your life and stop your business just because you have a baby, right?" And like it was, and it is, it's so, and like, I feel so blessed to be able to do that. Like, I don't know if I'd be able to do that if I was doing like what I was doing before. Like, I mean, I've had like things. I was on a sales call once with this guy, and my 2-year-old ran in, like, stark staring naked, like, straight out of the bath, just like,
Sure.
just streaked by behind me, and I didn't actually close that sale then, but I ended up working with him like a year later, and every once in a while he would still bring it up. He's like, "Oh, is everyone dressed?" And I'm like, "I hope so." you know but like, that was just how it was. And that's when people used to ask me, like, when I taught a LinkedIn class, I remember, a very, very long time ago, and it became like my LinkedIn mini course. And someone asked me, like, "Why do you put in your LinkedIn bio that you're a mom of 4?" And I was like, "Because that is a very, very big part of who I am. And I need people to know that. And if someone has a problem with me pausing to talk to my kid in the middle of a call, or dealing with something, or having a child in my lap, then they're probably not the right client for me. And they should know that. And that's
Right.
okay." Right.
Right.
Even though LinkedIn is so professional and so, like, blah, 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 I'm like, fine. Yeah, fine. But like, this is what I do. This is how I run my business. And and it's okay if you're not okay with that. Like, it's fine. I'm not judging you for that. But if you can't handle that, then that's great to know before we even have to waste our time having a conversation. And
Right.
so that, to me, is like, that's exactly, like, this is what, when I was nursing him, I was like, this is what I do. This is the whole reason for it. So I can do this and and it's okay, you know? So, like, I just think, like, people are always like, "Oh, when's the best time to have a baby?" I'm like, never and always. There's never a best time to have a baby, because there's always going to be something that's happening, you know?
Right.
It's never the perfect, all the stars aligned sort of. I mean, I found out I was pregnant the day before a war broke out, and I was so happy, and I was a little freaked out because, like, it's a baby, because, wow, baby, and like, I was so excited. And then, like, the next day, like, that was such a roller coaster of emotions in 48 hours, like, I cannot even describe. And you would think, like, this is a very bad time to have a baby because there's a lot of very traumatic stuff happening. And, like, number one, it actually really comforted me, right? It made me feel like, here we are, just going on with life and growing our family no matter what happens around us, you know. And also, he was such a gift. He was such a gift for us. He's just such a happy little cheerful cutie pie, and he makes everyone around him so happy. And we're all just completely obsessed. And I'm like, and I cannot think of a better time it would have been to have him, because he brought so much joy into our life, before and after he was born. And so, my kids were so excited. Like, they were like,
Right.
"Oh my gosh, like, it's finally," like, like, 'cause there was a pretty big gap between him and my daughter, and they're like, "We're waiting." My oldest son was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. Like, you guys just, but like, it was so cute to see. Like, and so I really think that when it comes down to, like, you can plan all you want ahead of time. Things are probably going to be different than what you imagined, and that's okay, right? But like, you can plan to, and I'm actually creating an entire course on how to plan for your maternity leave and how to, like, build out a profitable maternity leave. And I started creating it before I had him. And now I'm so glad I waited to finish it till after, because I can look back and see the stuff that I was like, all you need to do is this. I'm like, that's not easy to do. I'm like, don't say all you need to do. Like, take that out, like, it's not, like, let's make it a little more realistic, and, like, and, like, not through, like, the lens of a type A, overachiever Enneagram 3, like, let's try to do this, like, normally. So it was very
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you prepare? Because I can tell you what worked for me, but I'd love to hear how did you make sure that you pay yourself for a maternity leave?
Okay. So first of all, I feel like and I speak about this at the beginning of my maternity leave thing. So you get a little sort of peek into the actual course. So there's a few things you need to think about when you're considering what you have to prepare for. Okay. And you have to figure out like kind of what are your priorities during maternity leave, right? Like what are your biggest priorities? So to me, my biggest priorities were serving my clients. Okay. So in that case, I was like, well, I'm not going to be on calls for for at least a month or two after I have the baby. Like, let's be realistic here. So what I did was, number one, anyone who joined any of my programs right before I had my baby got an automatic 2 months added to whatever they were part of. And I literally said, I'm like, whatever time I take off that I'm not available to you, I'm adding on to whatever package you have. Okay, so like that was like they're gonna get what they paid for no matter what. It may not be at the exact time, like uninterrupted, but you're getting. If you paid for 12 months of coaching, you're getting 12 months of coaching. You paid for 6, you're getting 6. Like whatever that is, you're getting it. Okay, so that was the first thing. And I also set up again like co-working calls and mastermind sessions, and a couple of guest experts and stuff to come in and serve my clients when I couldn't. So that was the first part, which was really important to me, that they continue to be somewhat supported during that time, even if I'm not showing up the same way I normally would, not postpartum. So that was the first thing. The second part was nurturing my audience. And the cool thing is that when you have a podcast, like when you have that sort of content where it's kind of like bingeable, like even when I wasn't promoting my podcast, I'd still see people listening to it, right? Because it's LinkedIn on my Instagram, and it's in all of my emails, and it can just be found like in general, right? So like people were still listening to the podcast. And again, I would send, roundups, hey, just, listen to this. I did this one last summer and it's still very relevant, like stuff like that. So that was like nurturing my audience with consistent content, either to email, right? I also sent them those collabs. So it was a lot of like giveaways and really basically free gifts. I was like basically saying, here's like a summer full of free gifts for you. Like, you're welcome, right? Like, very few of those things were actual paid promotions, like the ones I did. They were very much like, I'm part of a whole bunch of really amazing bundles and giveaways, and here's this amazing summit. Like, take this and learn from it. So that was like the nurturing part. And I wanted people to still remember that I existed, like after I had the baby, and then growing my audience as well. So that was also like a priority for me. And that's what I did with those collabs, right? So it was actually did double duty, because it both nurtured my audience, gave them something to use and value, but also grew my audience and from other people's audiences, which was amazing. And selling to my audience, which basically off the back of a lot of those bundles and summits and freebies and stuff like that, I made a whole bunch of sales, because I did have some funnels set up, not all the ones I want to, right? I really want to be able to connect my bigger programs to my smaller things. Like I have a lot of smaller funnels, but I really want to have like a really nice through line from my smaller things to my bigger stuff. And that's what I'm working on right now. But I was getting random, like just like, ooh, just sale here, sale there, like, oh, someone bought the order bump of this, someone bought the upsell of that, right? Which is really, really, really fun, because again, I was not like fully promoting it. So I didn't want to have to actively sell to my audience at all. But I'm like, well, how can I bring them in as many places as possible that can create sales on the back end? Right. And obviously there's customer service for anything that's needed. And that's what I had, the help of my friends VA for, which is basically like just making sure it's taking care of anything, sending me any updates of like any questions that my clients had, or just making sure that they were getting their reminders and things like that. So you have to kind of I do like an order of priority. My first priority obviously was my existing clients, because they already paid me. Like that's who I like. And then the grow, nurture, sell is something that really should always be happening. But obviously it was in a much more laid back way than I was doing it before. Right. And you also have to think about as well, before you're going offline, what is going to give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to the work that you're putting in, right? So just creating like podcast episodes, like for me, it ended up not being worth the time. And I'm like, I will come back. I'm like, let's just say it's like a season, like a Netflix, it was a season. Now there's a season break, and now I'll come back, and now like the fall season, I'm back. So I'm like, I'm taking a break for the summer. Like that's how it's going to be. It actually worked out really well, because he was born like right before Q3 started. So like, it was like it was like, I basically took a quarterly break from like creating new podcasts, but there was like almost 50 podcast episodes that already were there. People could have listened to for every week for a year without having to have me create any more. So I'm like, I felt really good about that, because I already created that for them. And also like thinking about, and I have a really great priority matrix that I give my clients, kind of think about like what projects they actually want to implement based on like what they actually have at hand, right? And like, how much is it going to take? Is it going to take a lot of extra work? Is it going to take a lot of extra money? Is it going to take a lot of extra time, right? Is it going to take a lot of extra team or hiring things, right? And like seeing like what they already have that can be leveraged. So this could be, again, repurposing content you already have, adding updated lead magnets to your existing content as well. Maybe looking back at your podcast episodes and saying, oh, this call to action is no longer relevant. So why don't I just take that out of the description and put a new one that will work, right? Instead of having to record a new podcast episode with a new call to action, just put a new call to action in the description. It's fine. People are still going to find it, it's okay. Optimizing, breaking out smaller pieces. Like that's what I'm doing right now with my mom viable marketing method. I teach that in my signature program, CEO Mom Academy. And I was like, but the content module, like my clients like raved about that module, that one, and the branding and messaging. Those are two that were like the real, like, oh my God, like this is life-changing, mind-blowing, amazing. I'm like, I could pull those out and use those as like smaller things that I sell and like kind of use it as bait to be like, if you want the rest of it, join the program. Like I'm just putting this out there. Like it's fine. Like, and I have no problem with anyone knowing this. Like if this is good, the rest of it is amazing because it puts all the pieces together. So, considering taking, instead of saying, oh, I want to create something new to sell, how about you pull a smaller piece out of your bigger offer and pre-sell that and add a coupon code in the back end to get people to come, like say like, hey, if you want the rest of this, use this special coupon code for maybe whatever they paid for it. So let's say it was like $200. Be like, okay, so $200, you get $200 off the main course, right? So again, looking at what you already have, and the best thing to do is just take an inventory. I even created like a template, like an Airtable template of like, just like taking an inventory of what you actually have inside what you've already created. And if you're a service provider, have you already created tools for your clients, right? Like when I was a service provider, I had my entire content system, which I teach, right? I had my launch content planner, right? And like how like literally like broken out, like what can you take from the stuff you already have and that you've already created and use that to put in front of people to bring them into your world, right? Because it's gonna be very hard to be like, oh, I want to launch my big expensive group program, like right when I come back from maternity leave or right before. Like, I mean, you might want to, but maybe you don't want to. So very, very easy ways to kind of get people in the door without having to create anything new, I think was my biggest priority. And that really has worked for me. And now I have so many things that I can like to work with that like I don't need to create anything new. Like probably like, I mean, update things, yeah, maybe, but not actually from scratch because like it's all there. It all exists. I've already taught it. I've already talked about it. I just have to bring it forward and show it to people. So I think that's where people get really, because we're entrepreneurs, we like creating new things. We have shiny objects. We're like, oh, what about this? I'm bored with that. I didn't talk about that like 5 times before, 2 times before, right? Like we're like, I sold it once and it worked great. Now I want to sell something else. But I really had to be able to lean back and be like, well, it doesn't make any sense for me. So how can I leverage what I've already created, what I already have in so many different ways? And that's probably my biggest tip that I would give as far as preparing for maternity leave is not being like, oh, what are all the new things I can create? It's like, what do I have now? And what can I leverage now to serve me later? And that's like the biggest, and if you have a coach, they can look at your stuff and be like, well, what if you pulled that? And very, very, very often it's much easier for someone else to see because you're like, wow, what about this? What about that? Right. Whereas you're like, oh, that's just something I made one time. And they're like, but that looks amazing. Like, why can't you use that? Right. So that's where it really, really helps having an outside pair of eyes look at it and be able to help you like pull those things out because they can see, other people can see things in you that you don't necessarily see, which is, just
the power of coaching. Other people can see what you can't see on yourself. Oh, it's amazing. So I want to tell you something really interesting. My goal for my maternity leave was modeling for my clients that it's also totally okay to just take time off. And I completely sold out. I had 12 spots for when I come back from maternity leave. And I said, anybody who joins right now gets 3 months of access to all of my stuff, plus another 3 whole months with me one-on-one when I come back. So I was blown away when all of the spots were taken. And I went into maternity leave knowing that I have 12 people waiting for me when I come back. So I basically had to do nothing but relax. And I had no anxiety about, I have to get back and start to sell. There was no action to jump into. There was just the thing I love to do, the thing I love showing up for. Like, it is not hard for me to coach. It is not work for me to help someone. It's work for me to set up, the sales funnels and the talk about it, whatever. Like, that's hard work. So I was so at peace with the intentionality of being fully myself and fully present. And my clients felt it. My clients felt it. and now once I went back, my baby is now 6 months old. So my original clients are now graduating in like a couple of days. One of the ladies yesterday said, I helped her break the 4 mile thing, like the 4 minute mile.
4-minute mile. Yeah.
4 minute mile. That's what it's called. She completely doubled her income, or like 40%, just by working with me. And it was from the first session. You know how like they get a bunch of sessions? The first session was the breakthrough, and then the rest were just fun.
It's amazing.
It's like mind blowing. But you don't see it on yourself when you take a break and you're just present. You think you're not doing anything, but you have to realize you're doing so much.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's why I told my clients, I'm like, listen, I know I'm taking at least 2 months off, probably up to 3, maybe up to 3. I don't know. It depends how I feel. And that's the thing. The only thing I know is I don't know how I'm going to feel, because when my daughter, I was like 6 weeks after, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot wait to get back, and I was like, but because I wanted to, because I was just like in the mood, and this time I was like, I really don't want to get back yet. Like, it's okay. And like, that's okay. And like, they were fine with it, and so what I did was, I told them about 2 to 3 months, and about like halfway through the third month, I was like, I feel good about coming back in and answering them in Slack, right? So like, I'm not going to do any live calls yet, but I feel like I want to be able to have them ask questions and answer them with voice notes. Like, I feel like my mind is back to where it is, and I feel like really good about that, right? So then I just let them know, hey, now I'm back in the community. If you guys to ask me questions, and I'll get back to you in 48 hours, like as usual, because I just want to be able to coach you guys again. I really feel like I want to be there for you. I can't do live calls yet because, again, life and baby and whatever, but I just really miss. And so I think also, we also like think it doesn't have to be like either or, right? Like, if you're like, okay, I want to come back to work, but I can't do live calls because I can't commit to that right now. Okay, fine. You can do asynchronous coaching, and that works almost as well, really.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
when I think of asynchronous coaching, you do it on Slack. I do it on WhatsApp. It just works really well for my clients because they already have WhatsApp on their phone.
Right.
It is crazy how in one voice note you can completely change someone's day.
100%.
Crazy. I have people responding like, I'm going to listen to this at least 4 times until it seeps in and I can actually do what you said. And it's instant. It's instant. It's like they send a question. They could be in the other side of the world. As soon as I see it, I answer back, and boom, she's on her way to doing something that she didn't think she was going to do. Or, and, especially since I'm working with the balance of marriage and parenting and, life, there's questions that are very fuzzy. In the business world, we don't like these because they're like, there's no actual thing. It's not tangible. But somebody could call me and say, I'm having a really hard day, or I'm really not sure what to do next, or I just can't get my act together. And I'll give her exact information that she needs to hear, an exact like mindset shift, because I know her and because we've worked together, and it's just, it's exact to what she needs to hear. And it's always different for every person, which is also one of the coolest things that I find, is how unique the coaching could be. So I love
that's
that.
a really mom friendly sort of thing to offer, both on the side of the coach and also the side of the client. Because I always joke, I'll be like, oh, I just ran to the bathroom and I'm hiding in the bathroom right now, and my kids, and like, so if there's an echo, that's why. Like, so like, I'll just like hop into the bathroom, answer that quick question, and again, like, and I always say, I'm like, just send me a voice note. If you're gonna send me a voice note, just send me a little note and tell me what it's about, so I know like what, I usually, if I do like asynchronous, either on Slack or on Telegram, where I can transcribe it, so I can see quickly. I read much faster than I listen, so I can see quickly what they're talking about. And then I'm like, can I answer this quickly? Can I answer this quickly? Whereas again, if you can't like commit to showing up at specific times, which is very possible, depending. I know for me, it's very, very hard because it's my time zone, right? So like, I can only show up between certain hours for my clients. And if those hours don't happen to work that day or that week, then that's it. So I can still help them in between, because I can wake up in the morning and just sit there while I'm nursing my baby and just answer questions. I'm not doing anything else anyway. I'm just sitting there, right? So I may as well, do some coaching, and it makes you feel very, very close to them. Like, my clients who've gotten one-to-one Telegram coaching have been like, oh my God, they're like, this is so addictive. It's like the best thing ever. And I love it. I love doing it. And I love receiving it as a client as well. So
I love
again,
that
it doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah, I love that you said that you don't have to do everything or nothing. There's always somewhere in between that feels really good to you. I love
Yeah,
it. Okay, we could continue talking forever,
we
I'm
could.
sure, because we're just so fun. Let's wrap it up and tell everyone how they can find you, how they can give you money, and where they can work with you.
Okay, well, you can find me on Instagram, pretty much mostly Instagram at this point. Yael Bendahan, no, sorry, Instagram.com/the Yael Bendahan, THE, and my name. I'm the only one who's a business coach on there with my name, so it's very easy to find me. And you can work with me in a bunch of different ways. I have my CEO Mom Mastermind, which is like the closest way you can pretty much work with me right now, aside for one-to-one, where you get copy reviews, you get strategy, you have at least 2 calls a month, plus you get access to all my other programs, so you get up to like 3 or 4 calls a month. And obviously you get asynchronous coaching on the daily inside of Slack. But I also have my mini mastermind and my CEO Mom Academy, which is more for people who want to really book out the signature offers, like really at the 1 to 3K mark in their business, and they really want to just like start creating a signature offer and booking it out consistently. So you can check out all that on my website. It's like all there, yaelbendahan.com. And if you have any questions about anything or any other way to work with me, I have a little fun free offer I'll drop into Bat-Chen. You could drop it in the description as well. I can't remember if I gave you a freebie or not, but I'll give you something fun. So let me know if you have any questions. Just shoot me a DM. I love having conversations in the DMs on Instagram, because again, that's the best way for me to connect with people, is to chat on Messenger and voice notes, because that's my life right now. So thank you so much for having me here. And I really appreciate this. It was amazing.
This is so much fun. Thank you for coming. When I was looking at my little plan of the year, your name came up. Like, I didn't even have to ask you. It was like, of course Yael is doing this one. It's like birth and business. Who else's whole business is based on birth? you know?
It literally
So
is. I mean, my first program was called Baby Proof Your Business. So like that
yeah,
was it. So
I know.
yeah.
I remember that name. I loved it. So very cool. You guys can look out for my episode with Yael on her podcast, which is going to go soon. So that's
Yes.
exciting.
And we can
Um,
actually record it during the day, which
yeah,
is
there
fun.
you go.
I
This is
love it. Thank
exciting.
you.
If you have any questions, make sure to contact either of us. We are both really available and here for you. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to come back next week, and don't forget to be connected for real. And that's it. Thank you for listening to the very end. I would love if you can leave a review and subscribe to the podcast. Those are things that tell the algorithm this is a good podcast, and make sure to suggest it to others. Wouldn't it be amazing if more people became more connected for real? And now take a moment and think of someone who might benefit from this episode. Can you share it with them? I am Rebbetzin Bat-Chen Grossman from connectedforreal.com. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget, you can be connected for real.